Welcome back. A special envoy for South Africa's candidature for the United Nations Security Council, Aziz Pahad, is in New York to make South Africa's case for a 2-year non-permanent seat on the Security Council. That's ahead of elections in June this year. And of course, we've been there before. The former Deputy Foreign Minister says they hope to represent the broad challenges facing Africa and forming a stronger link between peace, stability and development. He also believes South Africa's controversial vote during its last term in the Council in favour of a no-fly zone over Libya was a mistake. Our correspondent, Sherwin Bryce-Peace, joins us now from New York. Sherwin, just tell us more about South Africa's agenda, because you've been saying it's a done deal that we will be on the Security Council.
Well, I say it's a done deal, Francis, because South Africa is running unopposed. They're on a clean slate for Africa. There's one seat available to Africa. And as these things work, regional groupings like SADC or the African Union in this instance basically earmark the position for a single country. They then come here and it's a fait accompli. Essentially, member states tend to go with what the regional groupings have decided. So South Africa is running unopposed and very likely will be getting that non-permanent 2-year term. The question is how many votes of support they will get, Francis. The last time they got, I think, around 183 out of 192 member states. There are now 193 members, and you do require 2/3 of the general membership to be elected onto the Security Council. So I think it's a matter of ego and prestige. They want to up those numbers. And they've sent a familiar face on the international scene, whom we haven't really seen for close to a decade now. One of the longest-serving deputy foreign ministers in South Africa, Aziz Pahad. And he's here to really lobby member states to meet with various groupings. I'm told he'll meet with the Africa group. He'll meet with the P3, which is the United States, the United Kingdom and France. He'll meet with BRICS countries, which include the other 2 permanent members, China and Russia. And we'll also have one-on-ones with the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, and the President of the General Assembly, Miroslav Lajcak. So really South Africa putting one of their strongest former international diplomats on the scene here in New York, really to get those numbers up to above, I think, 183 votes.
Well, I was going to ask, because Aziz Pahad in South Africa, we haven't seen him on television, for example, for a long while. But does he have that gravitas on the global stage?
It's a good question, Francis, and one I'm not going to offer my opinion on. He is 77 years old. He moves a little bit slower. He's not the feisty deputy foreign minister we would have remembered under the Mbeki administration, but he certainly understands the complex nature of how these things work. And we had a very detailed discussion, a sit-down with him earlier, and I asked him about what the South Africa's message is here. What is the selling point for South Africa's candidacy? How do you convince people that are not convinced that you'll be a good candidate for the Security Council? And his answer was quite simple. He said, we need to do more, a better job in really connecting the dots between development and peace and stability around the world. He quoted Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General, who made that famous quote about there can be no development without peace and there can be no peace without development. And I think that is a message that South Africa's candidacy will hearken to, this link between eradicating conflicts, silencing the guns in Africa, so that you can actually bring the SDGs and eradicating poverty and universal healthcare and dealing with climate change. One has to deal with conflicts so that one can really focus on developmental issues. So you're going to see that link. Another question I had, Francis, for Aziz Pahad was South Africa has been very critical of the unreformed nature of the Security Council, be it the question of the veto, be it the question of permanent seats. Certainly Africa is still pushing for 2 permanent seats on the Security Council. And I said, is there not an element of hypocrisy in criticizing the council and then on the other hand coming here to lobby for support for your candidature to join what you've essentially called an undemocratic organ of the United Nations? And his response to that was that it's important to have weaker, smaller, poorer countries having a seat at that table so that you can influence discussions. He said, we're probably not going to reach equality in terms of the power dynamics in the world in our lifetimes, but it's important for African countries, for poorer countries to have a voice at that that table. So, in a nutshell, development is going to be a very big issue, and linking that directly to peace and security, which is the ambit of the UN Security Council.
All right, well, thank you. You answered my final question, which was how much sway do we have with no veto vote, for example? But you're saying he says we can influence discussions. Thank you very much. We have to leave it there. Sherwin Bryce-Peace live for us from New York. Now back home, the security guard who was assaulted by irate soccer fans at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban has for the first time spoken out about his ordeal. Sabela Maziba was severely beaten after spectators invaded the field after Kaizer Chiefs lost to Free State Stars on Saturday.
"32-year-old Sabela Maziba reliving his nightmare. On Saturday night, he was attacked by angry Kaizer Chiefs supporters. He was kicked so hard he lost consciousness. Maziba says fans became violent when Chiefs were a goal down. He says the signs were already there, but he didn't think they would be attacked. He sustained broken ribs and head injuries during the attack.
I tried to stop them, but they overpowered me. I then ran for my life, but they caught up with me. They pinned me to the ground and attacked me.